Listen up, darling. I don't care what circus you escaped from. In my world, you play by my rules. Snap!
The slap echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Not the businessman in 12B who'd been typing furiously on his laptop. Not the mother in 16C trying to calm her crying toddler. Not even the flight attendant who'd just done it, her hands still suspended in the air, trembling slightly. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat spread across my skin. The sting was sharp, immediate, but I'd felt worse. What interested me more was the look on her face. That mixture of self-righteous satisfaction and something else. Fear, maybe. Or the dawning realization that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the ringing in my ears, was a mistake. She jabbed her finger toward my face. The only mistake here is thinking you people can act however you want on my flight. Sit down, shut up, and maybe you'll make it to Atlanta without getting arrested. I smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that should have warned her. I'll remember you said that. If you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, you know that feeling. That moment when someone decides who you are before you even open your mouth. But here's what most people don't know. Sometimes the person they're underestimating has the power to change everything. And I mean everything. So before we get to how this flight attendant's worst day turned into an entire airline's nightmare, hit that subscribe button, because this story gets wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Her name was Vanessa Chun. I know that now because her name tag caught the overhead light as she stormed back down the aisle, her blonde ponytail swinging with each aggressive step. 29 years old, 5 years with Skybridge Airlines, and according to the employee records I'd later review, 3 formal complaints filed against her in the past 18 months. All dismissed. All swept under the corporate rug with the efficiency of a company more interested in protecting its image than its passengers. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the moment I stepped onto Flight 2847 from New York to Atlanta, wearing my favorite old Howard University hoodie, the one with the frayed cuffs and the small bleach stain on the left sleeve that no amount of washing could fade. Ripped jeans, white sneakers that had seen better days. My locks pulled back in a simple ponytail. I looked like a college student heading home for break. Or maybe a young professional flying economy, because that's all the budget allowed. I definitely didn't look like someone who could afford the first-class ticket tucked in my phone's digital wallet. And I absolutely didn't look like someone who'd just spent the morning in a Manhattan boardroom, discussing a potential $400 million investment. That was the point. See, I do this once a month. Random flight, random route, dressed like I'm nobody special. It's the only way to see what's really happening on your planes. What your employees are really like when they think no one important is watching. What your passengers experience when they don't have status or money or the right skin color to smooth their way. My chief of staff thinks I'm crazy. Dr. Hayes, she'd said that morning, using my full title in that way that means she's about to give me a lecture. You have people for this. That's literally what mystery shoppers are for. But mystery shoppers don't own 34% of the airline. They don't sign the paychecks. They don't have the power to actually fix what's broken. I do. My name is Dr. Simone Hayes, 42 years old, PhD in Business Administration from Harvard, MBA from Wharton, undergrad from Howard. I spent 15 years building tech startups before I got tired of flying on airlines that treated passengers like cattle and employees like robots. So I bought one. Well, technically, my private equity firm bought a controlling stake in Skybridge Airlines 3 years ago when they were hemorrhaging money and desperate for a lifeline. We turned them profitable in 18 months. Expanded routes, upgraded planes, increased employee salaries, won awards for customer satisfaction. But clearly, we'd missed something. It started innocently enough. I'd boarded with the economy passengers, ignoring the surprised look from the gate agent when she scanned my ticket and saw the first-class designation. Ma'am, you're actually in 2A. I know, I'd said with a smile. I prefer sitting in back. More authentic experience. She'd shrugged and let me through. Why would she care? One less person crowding the fancy seats up front. I found my chosen seat, 24B, a middle seat because if you really want to understand the passenger experience, you go full masochist. I'd settled in with my tablet, pulling up quarterly reports that needed review, when Vanessa appeared. Excuse me. Her tone was already sharp, already impatient. This is economy. Your ticket shows first class. I looked up, keeping my expression friendly. I requested the seat change. Should be in the system. The system doesn't show any change. She crossed her arms. First-class passengers can't just decide to slum it in economy. It throws off our counts. Slum it. Interesting choice of words. I can show you the email confirmation. I don't need to see anything. What I need is for you to move to your assigned seat, so we can finish boarding. The man in 24A, a white guy in his 50s wearing a golf polo, chimed in. Just go sit in first class. Some of us paid for our seats and don't need the hassle. I turned to him with a pleasant smile. I paid for my seat too. Just because I'm not sitting in it doesn't mean. Ma'am. Vanessa's voice cut through the air like a blade. I'm going to ask you one more time to move to first class, or I'm going to have to call the captain. Around us, other passengers were starting to watch. Phones were coming out. I saw a teenager in 23C angle her camera toward us, her thumb hovering over the record button. This was the moment. The moment where I could have defused everything by just showing my ID, explaining who I was, and watching Vanessa's face drain of color. It would have been easy, simple, safe, but that wouldn't tell me what I needed to know. Call the captain, I said calmly. I'd be happy to explain the situation. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She spun on her heel and marched toward the cockpit, her stride eating up the narrow aisle. I watched her go, then looked down at my tablet. The quarterly reports showed a 3% increase in customer complaints. Not huge, but notable. Most were vague, staff attitude problems, and felt disrespected by crew. Now I was beginning to understand why. The teenager in 23C was definitely recording now. I could see it in my peripheral vision, the way her phone was angled, the slight glow of the screen. Good. Documentation would be important. 5 minutes later, Vanessa returned with backup. A man in his 40s, silver hair, captain's uniform, and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Behind him, a senior flight attendant whose name tag read Patricia Hoffman, and whose face already showed signs of exhaustion. Ma'am, I'm Captain Lawrence Brennan. His voice was professionally neutral. I understand there's some confusion about seating. I started to respond, but Vanessa jumped in first. She's refusing to sit in her assigned first-class seat. She's disrupting boarding and causing delays. I'm not refusing anything, I said, keeping my voice level. I requested a seat change, which was confirmed via email. I'm happy to sit here in 24B, which is currently unoccupied and available. Captain Brennan looked tired. Ma'am, if you have a first-class ticket, that's where you need to sit. We can't have passengers just switching between cabins. It's a security issue. Security? I raised an eyebrow. How is me sitting in a worse seat a security issue? Because we need to know where all passengers are at all times, Vanessa interjected. And frankly, first-class passengers sitting in economy makes our service numbers look bad. Like we can't provide adequate accommodation. There it was. The real reason. Not security. Not logistics. Optics. I see, I said. So this is about appearances. This is about you following the rules, Vanessa snapped. Something that seems to be difficult for you to understand. The golf polo guy in 24A nodded approvingly. Finally, someone who doesn't let people walk all over them. Patricia, the senior flight attendant, shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa, maybe we should just. No. Vanessa's voice was firm. We have policies for a reason. If we let one person break them, everyone thinks they can. I glanced around the cabin. More phones were out now. The teenager in 23C was still recording. A woman in 26D had her camera pointed directly at us. A man in 21A was live streaming. I could tell by the way he was narrating under his breath. Y'all seeing this? Flight attendant going off on this sister for no reason. Captain Brennan pinched the bridge of his nose. Ma'am, I really need you to cooperate. We're already running 15 minutes behind schedule. I am cooperating, I said. I'm sitting quietly in an available seat. I haven't raised my voice, haven't been disruptive, haven't done anything except exist in a space you've decided I don't belong. Don't make this about race, Vanessa said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. This has nothing to do with. I didn't mention race, I interrupted. You did. Her face flushed red. For a moment, I thought she might walk away, might step back from the edge she was approaching. But then the golf polo guy muttered something under his breath. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard enough. Typical and victim card, and people like her. And Vanessa smiled. Actually smiled. Like she'd found an ally. You know what? She straightened up, her whole demeanor shifting into something harder, meaner. I've dealt with passengers like you before. You get on the plane thinking the rules don't apply to you. Thinking you can do whatever you want because if someone calls you out, you'll just scream discrimination. Vanessa. Patricia tried to intervene, her voice urgent. But Vanessa was on a roll now. I'm not racist. I don't see color. What I see is an entitled passenger refusing to follow simple instructions. And honestly, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people like you making my job harder just because you want to make some kind of point. The cabin had gone completely silent. Even the crying toddler from earlier had quieted, as if sensing the tension. People like me, I repeated slowly. What exactly do you mean by that? You know exactly what I mean. Actually, I don't. Why don't you clarify? She leaned in closer, her voice dropping but still audible to everyone watching. Passengers who dress like they're going to the gym but somehow have first-class tickets. Who probably used points or got an upgrade or had someone else pay for the ticket. Who want to sit in economy so they can take videos and complain on social media about how badly they were treated. I've seen it 100 times. Vanessa, that's enough. Captain Brennan's voice had hardened. Let's just... No, let her finish, I said. I want to hear all of it. Vanessa straightened, emboldened. Fine. You want to sit in economy? Great. But don't expect me to treat you like a first-class passenger when you're acting like you belong in the cheap seats. The live streamer in 21A whispered into his phone. Did she really just say that? Y'all, this is crazy. The comments are going insane. Hold on. We're at 847 viewers now. This is blowing up. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Captain Brennan's professional mask had cracked, showing genuine alarm underneath. He knew. He could feel it. The moment spinning out of control. Okay, he said, his voice taking on new authority. Ma'am, I'm going to have to insist that I comply. I finished for him. I've heard that before. We can't take off until this is resolved. Then resolve it. Let me sit in the seat I requested. That's not how this works. Vanessa interjected. You don't get to make demands. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I do. That's when I made my first call. Not to my lawyer, though that would come later. Not to the media, though they'd be calling soon enough. I called my chief of staff. She answered on the first ring. Dr. Hayes? How's the flight? Interesting, I said. I'm going to need you to pull employee records for the crew on flight 2847. Specifically, a flight attendant named Vanessa Chun and Captain Lawrence Brennan. There was a pause. Oh no. What happened? I'll explain later. Just get me those files. And Sarah? Start drafting a press release. We're going to need it. What kind of press release? The kind that announces major policy changes. I'll send details in an hour. I hung up and looked at Vanessa. Her face had gone pale. Who were you talking to? My employee, I said simply. Your. She stopped, confusion crossing her features. Your employee? The live streamer's voice carried from 21A. Y'all, we're at 2,300 viewers. People are sharing this everywhere. Hashtag Skybridge Airlines is starting to trend. Captain Brennan's radio crackled. He lifted it to his ear, listened, then his face went completely white. Say that again? Whatever the voice on the other end said, it made him look at me with new eyes. Confused eyes. Worried eyes. Ma'am, he said carefully, I just received word from operations that there might have been a misunderstanding. You think? Vanessa looked between us. What's going on? Why don't you tell her, Captain? I suggested. He hesitated. I could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to figure out how to salvage a situation that was already beyond saving. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, I said firmly. We're past privacy. We're past discretion. We're in public accountability territory now. I gestured to the phones still recording, the passengers still watching. 23 people witnessed what just happened. Dozens more are watching on social media. So let's be clear about exactly what occurred here. I stood up, pulling myself to my full 5'6" height. Not tall, but in that moment, in that space, I felt like I took up the entire cabin. My name is Dr. Simone Hayes. I have a PhD from Harvard Business School and an MBA from Wharton. I've built 3 successful companies, sold 2 of them, and used the proceeds to invest in businesses I believe in. Businesses I think can do better. Be better. Vanessa had started to back up, her eyes wide. 3 years ago, I bought a controlling stake in an airline that was failing. An airline that had lost its way, that treated passengers like revenue streams instead of people, that had forgotten what service actually means. The teenager in 23C gasped. The live streamer in 21A swore under his breath. No way. No freaking way. That airline, I continued, was Skybridge Airlines. Which means, Vanessa, that when you decided to exercise your power over a passenger you deemed unworthy, when you made assumptions based on how I look and what I'm wearing, when you treated me like trash because you thought you could get away with it. I let the pause hang there, watching realization dawn on her face like a sunrise made of pure horror. You did it to your boss. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even breathing, it seemed. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Captain Brennan looked like he might be sick. Patricia had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with shock. The live streamer broke the silence. My God. Y'all, she owns the airline. She OWNS it. We're at 5,600 viewers and climbing. I pulled out my corporate ID badge, the one I kept in my phone case for emergencies. I held it up so everyone could see. Dr. Simone Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Skybridge Airlines, employee number 0001. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice carrying through the cabin with absolute authority. Captain Brennan, you're going to return to the cockpit. Patricia, you're going to take over cabin management for this flight. And Vanessa, she was trembling now, actually trembling. Vanessa, you're going to sit down in the jump seat and not say another word. When we land in Atlanta, there will be representatives from HR waiting to escort you off this aircraft. Do you understand? Dr. Hayes, she started, her voice cracking. Do you understand? She nodded, tears starting to stream down her face. Good. I sat back down in 24B, opened my tablet, and pulled up my email. Captain, we're now 16 minutes behind schedule. I suggest you make that up en route. And someone might want to make an announcement to the passengers, explaining that the delay was due to a crew matter that has been resolved. Captain Brennan practically ran back to the cockpit. Patricia stood frozen for a moment, then found her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are in the upright position. The cabin erupted, not in chaos, but in that electric buzz of people who'd just witnessed something they couldn't quite believe. Phones were still out, still recording. The live streamer was narrating frantically. This is the wildest thing I've ever seen on a plane. We're at 8,900 viewers. People are losing their minds in the comments. Golf Polo Guy in 24A had suddenly become very interested in the in-flight magazine, his face bright red. He'd been so quick to agree with Vanessa, so ready to put me in my place. I wondered if he realized his face was now being shared across social media, his casual prejudice immortalized for the internet to judge. I caught the eye of the teenager in 23C, still recording. I gave her a small nod. Document everything. The world needs to see. As the plane began to push back from the gate, my phone buzzed. Messages flooding in. Sarah, my chief of staff. OMG, Dr. Hayes, it's all over Twitter already. What do you need from me? My lawyer. I'm watching the live stream. Don't say anything else without me. Actually, never mind, you're the boss. Just try not to get us sued. My mother. Baby, I just saw a video. Are you okay? Did someone really slap you? Wait, what? I scrolled back through the messages and found a link. A video, posted 7 minutes ago. It had 47,000 views already. I pressed play and watched myself, from a different angle, as Vanessa's hand connected with my face. That slap I'd mentioned at the beginning. The one that happened before I told this story. Because I'd skipped ahead, hadn't I? Skipped past the part where it got physical. Where Vanessa, in her absolute certainty that she could do whatever she wanted to a passenger she'd deemed beneath her, actually struck me. Let me back up one more time. To the moment right after I made that call to Sarah, right after Vanessa realized something was wrong, but before she understood exactly how wrong. She'd grabbed my phone out of my hand. That was her first mistake. Actually, no. Her first mistake was every assumption she'd made from the moment she saw me. But the phone grab? That was the point of no return. You don't make calls during boarding, she'd said, clutching my phone like it was evidence. That's a federal regulation. Actually, it's not, I'd replied calmly. There's no regulation against phone calls during boarding. Only during flight. Don't tell me what the regulations are. But I just did. And I'm correct. That's when her hand came up. Fast. Fueled by embarrassment and anger and the absolute conviction that she could do this, that she had the right, that I deserved it for challenging her authority. The slap cracked across my face, snapping my head to the side. And then came the silence. The one I started this story with. Patricia had screamed. Captain Brennan, who'd been heading back to the cockpit, froze mid-step. The entire cabin gasped as one organism. Vanessa stood there, her hand still raised, shock spreading across her face as she realized what she'd done. Not shock at hitting me. I don't think that part bothered her much. Shock at doing it in front of witnesses. In front of cameras. She started, then stopped. Started again. You made me. If you just listened. If I'd just listened. I repeated, touching my cheek where the sting was still sharp and hot. If I just stayed in my place. If I just known my role. Is that what you're saying? I didn't, that's not. Because it sounds like you're saying this is my fault. That I made you hit me. The live streamer's voice was high and urgent. Did she really just slap a passenger? On camera? With 3,000 people watching live? This is insane. Captain Brennan finally found his voice. Vanessa, my office. Now. But Vanessa was spiraling, words tumbling out in a desperate cascade. She was being difficult. She wouldn't cooperate. She was disrupting everything. I had to maintain order. I had to. You had to assault a passenger? Patricia's voice was sharp. What were you thinking? I wasn't. I was. Vanessa looked around wildly, searching for support. Finding none. The golf polo guy was suddenly invisible, studying his magazine with intense concentration. The other passengers had gone silent, watching, recording, judging. That's when my phone buzzed in Vanessa's hand. She looked down at it, confused. Then her face went white as she read the caller ID. Sarah Morrison, Chief of Staff. She looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time. Saw past the hoodie and the ripped jeans. Saw the way I carried myself. The way I'd stayed calm through everything. The way I'd known exactly which regulation she was wrong about. Who are you? She whispered. I told you. Dr. Simone Hayes. But you can't be. My phone rang again, still in her hand. This time the caller ID read, James Park, VP of Operations. Then again, Linda Torres, General Counsel. Then again, Board of Directors, conference line. Each incoming call was another nail in the coffin of her career. Each one screaming the same message. This is not a normal passenger. This is someone important. This is someone with power. Vanessa dropped my phone like it was burning her. It clattered to the floor. Patricia bent to pick it up, handed it to me with shaking hands. Dr. Hayes, Patricia said carefully, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. We will take immediate action too. We'll talk about action when we land. I interrupted. Right now, I need everyone to sit down, calm down, and let this plane take off. We have 142 other passengers who have places to be. I answered the call from my general counsel. Linda, I'm fine. Yes, there was an incident. Yes, it's being recorded. No, I don't want to press charges right now. Let's see how the company responds first. I could hear her lawyer brain working through the phone. Dr. Hayes, she assaulted you. On camera. I know what it is. I also know that what happens next will define what kind of company we really are. So let's think carefully about our response. I hung up and looked at Vanessa, still standing there, frozen in shock. Sit down, Vanessa. In the jump seat. Now. She sat. The plane pushed back from the gate. The flight attendants went through their safety demonstration, Patricia handling most of it, while Vanessa sat in the jump seat, staring at nothing, her world crumbling around her in real time. My phone kept buzzing. Messages. Calls. Alerts. Twitter was exploding. Hashtag Skybridge slap was trending. The video had been shared 12,000 times. News outlets were starting to pick it up. Skybridge Airline's employee assaults passenger was already a headline on 3 travel websites. But the real headline, the one that was about to break, was so much bigger than one flight attendant's terrible decision. As we reached cruising altitude, I opened my laptop and began to type an email to every single employee in the Skybridge system. 12,847 people. Flight attendants, pilots, gate agents, mechanics, corporate staff, contractors. Subject line, what we stand for. I wrote about respect, about dignity, About the fact that every passenger who steps onto our planes deserves to be treated like a human being, not judged by their clothes or their skin or their seat assignment. I wrote about accountability, about how power requires responsibility, about how wearing a uniform doesn't give you the right to treat people as lesser. And I wrote about change, real change, not the corporate speak kind that sounds good in press releases, but means nothing, the kind that hurts, the kind that costs money and time and forces everyone to look at uncomfortable truths. I finished the email and my finger hovered over the send button. This was the moment, the decision point. I could handle this quietly. Fire Vanessa, issue a statement, maybe institute some new training. Keep it contained. Keep it professional. Or I could burn it all down and rebuild it right. My cheek still stung where she'd hit me. But what stung more was knowing that if I'd actually been who she thought I was, just a regular passenger in a hoodie, she probably would have gotten away with it. Maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe nothing at all. How many other passengers had experienced smaller versions of this? How many had been talked down to, dismissed, disrespected? How many had complained and been ignored? The answer was in our customer data. The 3% increase in complaints. The coded language about staff attitudes and feeling disrespected. This wasn't about Vanessa. She was a symptom. The disease was deeper. I pressed send. 12,847 employees got that email simultaneously. Within minutes, my phone lit up with responses. Shock, agreement, fear, support, anger. But the real response wouldn't come from employees. It would come from the world. Because I didn't just send an email. I also uploaded the video. The whole thing. From the moment Vanessa approached me to the moment she slapped me to the moment she realized who I was. I posted it on Skybridge's official social media accounts with a simple caption. This happened on our plane. This is unacceptable. Here's what we're going to do about it. And then I outlined the changes. Every single one. The policies that would change. The training that would be mandatory. The oversight that would be implemented. The accountability that would be enforced. I hit publish. The notification sounds started immediately. Likes, shares, comments. The numbers climbing so fast my phone couldn't keep up. 10,000 views. 50,000 views. 100,000 views. The cabin was quiet around me. Most passengers asleep or watching movies. They had no idea that the woman in 24B was currently setting social media on fire. My phone rang. I recognized the number. Board member. Specifically, the one who'd been most resistant to some of my proposed changes. The one who thought I was too aggressive, too focused on soft issues like diversity and inclusion. I answered. Hello, Jeffrey. Simone. His voice was tight. What the hell are you doing? Holding us accountable. By airing our dirty laundry in public? Do you have any idea how this looks? Like a company that takes responsibility for its failures? Like a company in crisis. Our stock is going to tank. Our insurance rates will skyrocket. And you're sitting there broadcasting this disaster to the world. The disaster already happened, Jeffrey. I'm just making sure everyone knows we're not going to hide from it. This is going to cost us millions. Good. Silence on the other end. Then what? If fixing this problem costs us millions, then we clearly haven't been investing enough in getting it right. Maybe we need to spend millions. Maybe we need to completely overhaul how we train our staff, how we handle complaints, how we think about passengers. You're willing to tank the company's stock price over one incident. I'm willing to tank the stock price over a culture that allowed this incident to happen. Jeffrey, we've had complaints. We've had problems. We've been doing the minimum required to look good while ignoring the actual issues. That ends today. The board will never approve this. The board, I said calmly, doesn't have to. I own 34%. I need 17% more to do whatever I want. And I'm betting I can convince at least 17% of the board that doing the right thing is more important than protecting our stock price for one quarter. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. I hung up. The video was at 500,000 views. News outlets were reporting on it. CNN had it on their breaking news ticker. The story was spreading beyond aviation circles, becoming a broader conversation about power, accountability, and privilege. My phone rang again. This time, a number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Dr. Hayes? A young woman's voice. My name is Jennifer Williams. I was a flight attendant with Skybridge until 6 months ago. Okay. I quit because of Vanessa Chun. She made my life hell. Racist comments, constant undermining, bullying. I reported it multiple times. Nothing happened. HR said it was a personality conflict, and I needed to work it out. My stomach sank. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not calling for an apology. I'm calling to say thank you. For not letting this go. For actually doing something. Her voice cracked. Do you know how many of us there are? Former employees who left because the culture was toxic? Current employees who stay quiet because they're scared? How many? I'm in a Facebook group. 73 former Skybridge employees, all with similar stories. All told to work it out, toughen up, not make waves. 73. Jesus. Jennifer, would you and the others be willing to talk to me? Officially? I'm going to be conducting a full review of our HR practices, and we'll talk. All of us. We've been waiting for someone to ask. She hung up, and I sat there in 24B, surrounded by sleeping passengers and the quiet hum of jet engines, and realized just how deep this went. This wasn't about one flight attendant. It wasn't about one slap. It was about a culture that had been broken for years, papered over with nice policies and good publicity, while the reality was that people were suffering and complaining and leaving, and nobody with power had been listening. Until now. The video hit 1 million views. Vanessa Chin's name was trending on Twitter. Her Facebook profile had been found and was being shared. Her Instagram account went private, but not before screenshots were saved and distributed. People were digging into her background, finding other stories, other complaints that had never been addressed. The internet had turned her into the villain of the moment. And while part of me felt bad, nobody deserves to have their worst moment dissected by millions. Another part of me knew this was necessary. Not for revenge, for accountability. Because if Vanessa was the only person who faced consequences, nothing would actually change. The next Vanessa would just be more careful, more subtle, would learn to discriminate in ways that couldn't be captured on camera. Real change required looking at the whole system. And I was about to take an axe to it. My laptop was still open. I started a new document. Comprehensive cultural audit and reform plan. I typed for an hour straight. Every problem I'd identified in 3 years of owning this airline. Every complaint that had been dismissed. Every policy that looked good on paper but failed in practice. Every metric that showed we were succeeding financially while failing morally. And then I outlined solutions. Expensive, time-consuming, difficult solutions. The kind that would make Jeffrey and his board member friends have heart palpitations. Mandatory bias training for all employees. Not the checkbox kind. Real training with assessments and accountability. An independent oversight committee to review all discrimination complaints. Not HR. Not management. Independent third parties with power to investigate and recommend action. Body cameras for flight attendants, just like police. To protect them from false accusations and protect passengers from mistreatment. A passenger bill of rights, clearly posted and enforced, with real consequences for violations. And perhaps most importantly, a cultural shift from the customer is always wrong until they prove otherwise to every passenger deserves basic dignity and respect. It would cost tens of millions of dollars. It would require months of implementation. It would disrupt operations and probably hurt our short-term performance metrics. And it was absolutely necessary. The plane began its descent into Atlanta. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Flight attendants, prepare for landing. Patricia moved through the cabin, checking seatbelts and tray tables. She paused at my row. Dr. Hayes, again, I cannot express how sorry. Patricia, how long have you worked for Skybridge? She blinked at the question. 17 years. Have you ever witnessed something like what happened today before? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Not exactly like this, but there have been incidents. Usually handled more quietly. Handled, or hidden. Her silence was answer enough. When we land, I said, I want you to come to the operations office. I'm going to need someone who knows the reality of what's been happening. Someone honest enough to tell me the truth. She nodded slowly. Okay. The wheels touched down. The passengers applauded, which they always do when a flight lands without incident, even though landing is literally what planes are designed to do. But today felt different. There was an energy in the cabin. People knew they'd witnessed something significant. As we taxied to the gate, I saw them through the window. A small crowd waiting on the jetway. HR representatives, I assumed. Maybe security. Definitely corporate lawyers, knowing Linda. My phone showed 1.7 million views on the video. Hashtag Skybridge slap was the #2 trending topic in the United States. News helicopters were probably circling the airport by now. The plane stopped. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Vanessa hadn't moved from the jump seat. She sat there, staring at her hands, tears streaming down her face. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part of me knew this was necessary. Not just for justice, but for change. Patricia spoke quietly into her phone, then approached Vanessa. "They're ready for you." Vanessa stood on shaky legs. She looked at me one last time. "Dr. Hayes, save it for HR," I said, not unkindly. "And Vanessa, get a good lawyer. You're going to need one." She walked down the aisle like a prisoner approaching execution. Every passenger watched her go, some with satisfaction, some with pity, all with phones ready to capture her walk of shame. The teenager in 23C called out, "That's what you get for putting your hands on people." I turned to look at her. "What's your name?" "Tasha. Tasha, can I give you some advice?" She nodded, suddenly uncertain. Accountability is important, but so is recognizing humanity. What happened today wasn't entertainment. It was a failure of training, of culture, of systems. Don't celebrate someone's destruction. Use it as a lesson about how we can all do better. She looked down at her phone, then back at me. "Yes, ma'am." I gathered my things and stood. The golf polo guy in 24A suddenly found his voice. "Dr. Hayes, I just want to say, don't." I cut him off. "You were part of the problem today. You agreed with her, encouraged her. And now that you know who I am, you want to apologize? Save it. I'm not interested in apologies from people who are only sorry they picked the wrong target." His face went red again. Good. Let him feel uncomfortable. Let him think about his own biases. I walked down the aisle toward the exit. Passengers were silent as I passed, but I could feel their eyes on me. Some probably felt vindicated. Some probably thought I was overreacting. Some were probably already composing their hot takes for social media. I didn't care. I'd stopped caring what people thought about me a long time ago. The only thing that mattered was doing the right thing, even when, especially when, it was hard. The jetway was crowded. Linda Torres, my general counsel, stepped forward first. "Dr. Hayes, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine. We have paramedics standing by if." "Linda," I said, "I'm fine." Behind her, I recognized James Park, my VP of operations, and behind him, 3 people in suits who could only be from HR. And behind them, airport security, and behind them, oh, media. Somehow they'd gotten past security. Cameras and microphones and reporters shouting questions. "Dr. Hayes, how does it feel to be assaulted by your own employee? Will you be pressing charges? Is it true you were flying incognito? What changes will you be making to airline policy?" Linda moved to block them. "No comment at this time. Dr. Hayes will be releasing a statement." "I'll talk to them," I said. "What?" "Dr. Hayes, I strongly advise." "I know what you advise, but they're going to write the story anyway. Might as well be accurate." I stepped forward, facing the cameras. The questions came at me like bullets. "Why were you sitting in economy? Did you know the flight attendant had prior complaints? Some people are saying you're making too big a deal out of this." I held up a hand. Silence fell. "I'm going to make one statement, and then I'm done. What happened on Flight 2847 today was unacceptable. But it wasn't surprising. It was the culmination of systemic failures that have been happening at this airline and across this industry for years." The cameras pressed closer. I kept talking. "Passengers are treated as problems to be managed rather than people to be served. Employees are given power without accountability. Complaints are dismissed. Patterns are ignored. And people suffer in silence because they don't think anyone with power cares enough to listen." A reporter shouted, "Are you saying Skybridge has a discrimination problem?" "I'm saying the entire industry has a discrimination problem. And Skybridge is going to be the first airline to actually do something about it." "What does that mean specifically?" "It means everything changes. Training, policies, oversight, accountability, culture, everything. Starting tomorrow. And it's going to cost us a fortune and tank our stock price, and probably make a lot of people very angry. And I don't care." "Why not?" I looked directly into the camera. "Because 3 years ago, I bought an airline with the belief that we could do better, that we could treat passengers with dignity, compensate employees fairly, and still run a profitable business. Today proved I was wrong about having already achieved that. So now we're going to actually do the work to make it true." "What about Vanessa Chun? Will she be fired?" Personnel matters are confidential. But I will say this, individual accountability is important, but it's not enough. If we just fire Ms. Chun and move on, we've learned nothing. The next incident will happen with a different employee, and we'll be right back here. Real change requires looking at why someone like Ms. Chun felt empowered to treat a passenger that way in the first place. Are you defending her actions? Absolutely not. What she did was assault. It was wrong. It was criminal. And there will be consequences. But consequences without systemic change are just revenge. And revenge doesn't fix anything. I could see it in their faces. Some understood what I was saying. Others were already crafting headlines about me defending the flight attendant who assaulted me. Such is the nature of nuance in the age of clickbait. One more question, a reporter called out. Your stock is down 4% in after-hours trading. Investors are nervous. What do you say to them? I say buckle up. Because we're about to prioritize people over profit margins. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you should probably invest elsewhere. Linda looked like she might have a stroke. James Park was pale. The HR representatives were frantically taking notes. But I meant every word. That's all I have to say. Thank you. I turned and walked through the crowd, Linda and James flanking me like bodyguards. Behind us, the reporters kept shouting questions, but I was done. We made it to a private conference room. The door closed. Linda immediately started. Dr. Hayes, you cannot tell investors to sell their stock. The board is going to. The board is going to hear what I have to say at our emergency meeting tomorrow morning. And then they can decide if they want to keep me as CEO or find someone else. But I'm not backing down on this. You could lose control of the company. Then I lose control. But at least I'll lose it doing the right thing. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. I'm proud of you, baby. Even if you are being a little crazy. I smiled. Maybe I was crazy. Probably I was crazy. What sane person torpedoes their own stock price and challenges their board and broadcasts their company's failures to the world? But I'd spent my whole life being careful, being strategic, playing the game, building companies, making money, achieving success by the metrics that society values. And today, sitting in seat 24B, feeling the sting of a slap across my face, I'd realized something. None of that matters if you're not using your power to make things better. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Dr. Hayes, my name is Marcus Thompson. I was the live streamer in seat 21A. The video has 2.3 million views now. People are calling you a hero. Just wanted you to know. I texted back. I'm not a hero. I just got angry enough to finally act. But thank you for recording. Documentation changes everything. There was a knock on the conference room door. Patricia, the senior flight attendant, stood there nervously. Dr. Hayes? You said to come find you. Come in. Close the door. She sat down across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth. How bad is it really? The culture, the complaints, the problems we've been ignoring. She took a deep breath. Bad. Really bad. Vanessa isn't the only one. There are at least a dozen crew members I can think of who have issues. They're not all as blatant about it, but they make comments. They treat certain passengers differently. And when someone complains, nothing happens. HR talks to them. They take some online training module, and then they're back on flights. Why didn't you report this to senior management? I did. 3 times. I was told I was being too sensitive, that I needed to focus on my own performance and let others worry about theirs. The last time I reported something, my supervisor told me I was creating a hostile work environment by making accusations against my colleagues. I closed my eyes. Jesus. It's not just crew members either. Gate agents, customer service, even some pilots. There's this culture of, I don't know how to describe it. Like passengers are the enemy. Like our job is to control them rather than serve them. How long has it been like this? As long as I've been here. 17 years. Though it's gotten worse in the last 5 or 6. More complaints from passengers, more tension, more incidents that get swept under the rug. I opened my laptop and pulled up the HR complaint database. Patricia was right. Dozens of complaints. Hundreds, actually. A pattern so clear it was impossible to miss, unless you were trying not to see it. Patricia, I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. I want you to help me identify every employee who has shown a pattern of problematic behavior. Not just the obvious cases like Vanessa. Everyone. And then we're going to audit every complaint, every incident, every time someone raised a concern and was ignored. That's going to be a lot of people. I know. Some of them are going to be in management. Senior management. I know that too. She looked at me for a long moment. This is going to get ugly, isn't it? Probably. Are you still willing to help? She nodded. Yeah, I am. Because I'm tired of pretending everything is fine when it's not. We worked for 3 hours. Patricia walked me through incident after incident, name after name. By the end, we had a list of 47 employees with documented patterns of discriminatory behavior or passenger mistreatment. 47 people who were still working, still interacting with passengers, still representing Skybridge Airlines. It was nearly midnight when Linda poked her head in. Dr. Hayes, the board is demanding an emergency call. Like, right now. Tell them I'll call at 8 a.m. tomorrow. They're saying if you don't call now, they're going to convene without you and what? Fire me? Let them try. I own 34% of this company, Linda. They can't fire me without cause, and actually addressing systemic discrimination isn't cause. Jeffrey is saying you're acting erratically, that the assault affected your judgment. I laughed. Actually laughed. Of course he is. Because admitting I'm right would mean admitting he's been wrong for years. Tell Jeffrey I'll talk to the board tomorrow. On my schedule. And if he doesn't like it, he can call another emergency meeting to discuss my erratic behavior. I'm sure the media would love to cover that. Linda left, and I turned back to Patricia. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be intense. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Dr. Hayes? Thank you. For caring enough to do something. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room, looking at the list of names on my screen. 47 employees. Plus Vanessa made 48. And those were just the ones with documented complaints. How many more were flying under the radar? My phone buzzed. The video was at 3.1 million views. Hashtag Skybridge Slap was still trending. But now there was another hashtag. Hashtag Skybridge Reform. People were sharing their own stories. Passenger after passenger describing mistreatment on Skybridge flights. Other airlines too. A whole thread of people who'd been discriminated against, talked down to, made to feel less than human by people in positions of minor authority. And mixed in with the complaints were messages of support. Finally, a CEO who actually gives a damn. This is what accountability looks like. I'm flying Skybridge next time just to support this. I wanted to feel good about that. But I couldn't. Because none of this should have required me getting slapped on camera to happen. I should have been doing this work all along. The fact that it took a viral video to force my hand was its own kind of failure. My phone rang. Sarah, my chief of staff. Please tell me you're not still at the airport. Okay, I won't tell you that. Dr. Hayes, it's midnight. You need rest. Tomorrow is going to be impossible. I know, but I can't sleep right now. My mind is racing with everything that needs to change. Then at least go to your hotel. Work from there. You're going to need your energy. She was right. I gathered my things and headed for the exit. The airport was quieter now, most of the late flights already departed or arriving. A janitor mopped floors. A few sleepy passengers waited for red ice. Normal. Everything looked so normal. Like the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. My phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. Skybridge Airlines CEO assaulted by employee in viral video. Stock down 6% after hours. 6%. That was roughly $180 million in market value. Gone. Because of one slap and my decision to not cover it up. Jeffrey was going to lose his mind at tomorrow's board meeting. I smiled. Let him. Because I had something he didn't have. The moral high ground and 34% of the company. Plus, I was about to find out which board members actually cared about doing the right thing versus which ones only cared about quarterly returns. The ones who only cared about money, they could sell their shares. I'd find investors who understood that sustainable success requires actually treating people well. Outside, the Atlanta humidity hit me like a wall. Summer in Georgia. Oppressive and thick and uncomfortable. Kind of like tomorrow was going to be. I climbed into the waiting car and checked my phone one more time. The video was at 3.8 million views now. Comments still flooding in. The story spreading across platforms, across countries, across the world. By morning, everyone would know what happened on Flight 2847. Everyone would have an opinion about how I handled it. Everyone would be watching to see what I did next. Good. Let them watch. Because what I was about to do, the complete overhaul of Skybridge Airlines culture, the accountability I was about to enforce, the changes I was about to implement, it was going to send shockwaves through the entire industry. And it was going to start in exactly 8 hours. When I walked into that board meeting and told 12 wealthy, powerful men exactly how badly they'd failed. I closed my eyes as the car pulled away from the airport, already mentally preparing for the battle ahead. Tomorrow, everything changed. Tomorrow, 48 employees would learn that actions have consequences. Tomorrow, the aviation industry would learn that at least one CEO was done playing nice. Tomorrow, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Dr. Hayes? A man's voice, uncertain. My name is David Park. I'm an attorney. I represent Vanessa Chun. I sat up straight. Go on. My client wants to speak with you. Before the formal proceedings begin. She understands she's going to be fired, probably arrested. She understands the gravity of what she did. But she wants a chance to explain, to apologize. In person. Why would I agree to that? Because, he said carefully, she has information you need to hear. About other incidents. Other employees. Things that never got reported because of how complaints are handled. She's willing to cooperate fully if I what? Go easy on her. If you'll just listen. That's all she's asking. A chance to be heard before her life completely falls apart. I was quiet for a long moment. Every instinct said no. Said that Vanessa had forfeited her right to my time and attention the moment her hand connected with my face. But another part of me, the part that meant it when I said individual accountability wasn't enough, wondered if she really did have information that could help. Tomorrow, I said finally. 9 a.m. Before the board meeting. 15 minutes. That's all she gets. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. We'll be there. I hung up and stared out the window at Atlanta passing by. Streetlights and late-night diners and people living their normal lives, unaware that in a conference room tomorrow morning, the entire future of an airline, and maybe an industry, would be decided. The car pulled up to my hotel. The driver opened my door. Have a good night, Dr. Hayes. You too. I rode the elevator to the 15th floor, walked to my room, and collapsed on the bed fully clothed. My cheek still hurt where she'd slapped me. I touched it gently, feeling the slight swelling that had developed. Tomorrow, Vanessa Chun would sit across from me and try to explain why she thought it was okay to hit a passenger. Tomorrow, the board would try to convince me to back down, to handle this quietly, to protect the company's reputation. Tomorrow, the media would dissect every word I'd said at the airport, every decision I'd made, every action I'd taken. Tomorrow was going to be hell. But tonight I was going to sleep like someone who knew, absolutely knew, that she was doing the right thing. Even if it cost me everything. I didn't sleep. How could I? My mind kept replaying everything. The slap, the silence, the cameras, the cascade of consequences that was still unfolding in real time. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face. Not the moment of impact, but the moment after. That split second where she realized what she'd done and couldn't take it back. At 5 a.m., I gave up trying and ordered coffee from room service. By 5:30, I was showered and dressed in what I called my armor, a perfectly tailored navy suit, crisp white blouse, heels that added 3 inches to my height. If I was going into battle, I was going to look like I belonged there. My phone showed 4.7 million views on the video. Morning news shows were leading with the story. Airline CEO assaulted by employee scrolled across CNN's cheering. Fox News had a panel debating whether I was handling it correctly or making it worse. MSNBC was running a segment on discrimination in the airline industry. The stock had dropped another 2% in pre-market trading. We were down 8% total now. That was $240 million in market value, gone. Jeffrey had sent me 17 emails overnight, each one more frantic than the last. I deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. At 7:45 a.m., I walked into Skybridge's Atlanta corporate offices. The lobby was chaos. News crews camped outside. Security trying to keep them back. Employees whispering in clusters, their eyes following me as I passed. Linda met me at the elevator. Dr. Hayes, Vanessa Chun and her attorney are already here. Conference room B. Good. Let's get this over with. Are you sure you want to do this? You don't owe her. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it because if she has information that helps me fix this place, I need to hear it. Conference room B was small, windowless, deliberately uncomfortable. Vanessa sat on one side of the table, her lawyer beside her. She looked terrible, eyes swollen from crying, face pale, hands trembling as they clutched a tissue. She stood when I entered. "Dr. Hayes, Sit down." She sat. I took the chair across from her, Linda standing behind me like a sentinel. "You have 15 minutes. Talk." Her lawyer started. "My client wants to express her deepest." "I don't care about her apologies," I interrupted. "Your client's attorney said she has information I need. That's the only reason I'm here. So either she starts talking about that, or we're done." Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "There's a group chat." "What?" "A private group chat. On Signal. Encrypted. About 40 flight attendants and some gate agents. We call it the real Skybridge." She looked down at her hands. "We share stories. About passengers we don't like. About how to handle difficult people. About which supervisors don't care if we bend the rules." My stomach dropped. "Show me." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, opened the app, and slid it across the table. I scrolled through the messages, and with each swipe, I felt sicker. Had another one of those passengers today. Acted like she owned the plane. Put her in her place real quick. Why do they always have an attitude? Like, just follow the rules, and we won't have problems. Got assigned to ATL-NYC route again. Brace yourself, it's always them on that route. The messages went back 2 years. Hundreds of them. Coded language that wasn't actually coded at all. Everyone knew exactly what those passengers and them meant. And the worst part? Supervisors were in the chat. People in management. People who should have shut this down immediately were participating, laughing, encouraging it. How many people are in this chat? My voice was ice. 43. And management knows about it. Some of them are in it. She named 3 supervisors. 2 of them were on my senior operations team. I looked at Linda. "Get HR Director Thompson on the phone. Now, tell him I want every person in this chat identified and suspended by noon today." Linda stepped out to make the call. I turned back to Vanessa. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because." Her voice broke. "Because I lost everything yesterday. My job, my reputation, probably my freedom. And sitting in that jump seat, watching you handle everything with so much grace while I just hit you, I realized something." "What?" "I'm not a bad person." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "But I became one. Slowly. Over years. Because everyone around me was doing it too, and nobody stopped us. And after a while it just felt normal. Like this was how you survived working for an airline. You created an us versus them mentality because otherwise the job would break you. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. But it's an explanation. And if you want to actually fix this place, you need to understand how people like me got created. Because I wasn't always like this. When I started 5 years ago, I actually cared. I wanted to help people. But the culture, it grinds you down. Makes you bitter. Makes you feel like passengers are the enemy instead of the reason you have a job." Her lawyer interjected. "My client is prepared to testify about the culture, the group chat, everything. In exchange, we're hoping for consideration on the criminal charges." "No deals," I said flatly. What she did was assault. That's non-negotiable. "But Vanessa, if you cooperate fully, if you tell the truth about everything, I'll make sure the court knows you tried to make it right. That's all I can promise." She nodded. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." I stood to leave, then paused. "Vanessa, one more question." "Why me? What made you think you could treat me that way?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you looked like someone who wouldn't matter. Someone who didn't have power or connections or the ability to fight back. And I'm so sorry that I thought that. Because even if you weren't the CEO, even if you were exactly who I assumed you were, you still deserved basic human dignity. And I took that from you." It was the most honest thing she'd said. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. Not for closure, but for confirmation that this wasn't just about one bad employee. It was about a system that taught people they could treat certain passengers as less than human. The board meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces ranging from concerned to hostile. Jeffrey Pemberton sat at the far end, his expression tight, with barely contained fury. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table and said, "Before anyone speaks, you're going to listen." Jeffrey started to interrupt. "Dr. Hayes, we need to discuss." I said, "Listen." The room fell silent. "Yesterday, I was assaulted by one of our flight attendants. That assault was filmed and viewed by nearly 5 million people. Our stock dropped 8%. Our reputation took a massive hit. And this morning, I learned that 43 employees, including 3 supervisors, are part of a private group chat where they share racist stories about passengers and coordinate how to discriminate more effectively. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. So here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, all 43 employees in that chat are suspended without pay, pending investigation. Anyone found to have participated in discriminatory behavior will be terminated. No exceptions, no second chances. That's nearly 50 employees. Jeffrey sputtered. We can't just. Yes, we can. And we will. Because keeping them would cost us far more than replacing them. I pulled up a presentation on the screen. Here are the numbers you actually care about. In the past 3 years, we've paid out $8.7 million in discrimination settlements. Quiet settlements with NDAs, because we didn't want the bad publicity. We've lost an estimated 40,000 customers who had negative experiences and never flew with us again. That's $12 million in lost revenue. We've had a 34% turnover rate in customer-facing positions because good employees get tired of working in a toxic culture and leave. Recruitment and training costs for that turnover, $15 million. I let those numbers sink in. So tell me, Jeffrey, what's more expensive? Firing 50 discriminatory employees and implementing real cultural reform? Or continuing to hemorrhage money and reputation while pretending everything is fine? Board member Sandra Liu spoke up. Dr. Hayes, I support accountability. But 50 terminations at once could cripple operations. Then we'll hire 50 better people. I've already contacted recruitment agencies. We'll fast-track training. We'll offer signing bonuses. We'll do whatever it takes. Because I am not running an airline where passengers have to wonder if they'll be treated with basic human dignity based on the color of their skin. Another board member, Thomas Wright, cleared his throat. What about the financial impact? 8% is significant. The stock will recover. You know why? Because in the long run, companies that actually treat people well perform better. We'll get short-term pain, sure, but we'll also get loyalty from passengers who are tired of being treated like cattle. We'll get better employees who actually want to work here. We'll get media coverage showing we took decisive action instead of hiding from our problems. Jeffrey stood up. This is reckless. You're making emotional decisions based on a personal incident. Sit down, Jeffrey. Excuse me. Sit down. He sat, his face red with anger. This isn't emotional. This is strategic. You want to know what's emotional? Protecting discriminatory employees because you're afraid of bad publicity. That's emotional. Running from accountability because you value quarterly earnings over human dignity. That's emotional. I'm making a calculated business decision that in 5 years, we'll either be the airline that had the courage to change, or we'll be the airline that died because we didn't. I clicked to the next slide. Here's what else is happening. Starting next week, every single employee goes through mandatory 8-hour bias training. Not the online module you click through. Real training with facilitators, discussions, role-playing. Anyone who refuses is terminated. That's going to cost millions, Jeffrey muttered. 3 million, actually. I already got quotes. And yes, it's expensive. But you know what's more expensive? Another viral video. Another lawsuit. Another settlement. Another wave of customers switching to our competitors. Next slide. We're implementing body cameras for all flight attendants. Optional for the first 3 months, mandatory after that. Footage will be reviewed randomly and in response to any complaint. It protects good employees from false accusations and passengers from mistreatment. Flight attendant unions will never agree to that, Thomas said. I spoke with union leadership at 6 a.m. this morning. They're actually supportive. You know why? Because good flight attendants want proof when passengers make false accusations. The only people who will fight this are the ones who know the cameras will catch them doing something wrong. Next slide. Independent Oversight Committee. 5 members, none of them Skybridge employees. They review every discrimination complaint, every investigation, every disciplinary action. They report directly to me and to the board. They have the power to recommend terminations, policy changes, whatever they deem necessary. Sandra Liu nodded slowly. That's actually a good idea. And finally, I clicked to the last slide, Passenger Bill of Rights. Posted at every gate, on every plane, on our website. Clear standards for how passengers will be treated. Clear process for complaints. Clear timeline for resolution. And most importantly, clear consequences for employees who violate these standards. The room was quiet. These changes will cost approximately $12 million to implement in the first year. We'll take a short-term hit to our bottom line. Our stock might drop another few percentage points. And I guarantee some of you will get calls from angry investors who think we should be focused on profit instead of principles. I looked each board member in the eye. But here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to run an airline where employees can assault passengers and keep their jobs. I'm not going to sweep discrimination under the rug because accountability is inconvenient. I'm not going to choose short-term stock price over long-term sustainability. And if that makes me unfit to be CEO in your opinion, then vote me out. But if I'm staying, we're doing this my way. Jeffrey found his voice again. Dr. Hayes, I move that we table these proposals until we can properly. Denied. I'm not asking for board approval. I'm informing you of decisions I've already made as CEO. You want to challenge them? Call a vote to remove me. Otherwise, this meeting is over. I walked out before anyone could respond. Linda caught up with me in the hallway. That was either brilliant or career suicide. Probably both. My phone buzzed. Sarah, my chief of staff. Dr. Hayes, you're trending on Twitter again. But this time it's positive. Hashtag Skybridge reform is bigger than hashtag Skybridge slap. People are calling you a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just doing what should have been done years ago. Well, the media wants you to do it on camera. Every major outlet is requesting interviews. Set up a press conference for 2 p.m. I'll address everything at once. The next 4 hours were a controlled demolition of everything broken at Skybridge Airlines. HR Director Thompson identified all 43 employees in the group chat. By noon, every one of them was suspended. By 1 p.m., we'd reviewed the chat history and flagged 27 for immediate termination based on documented evidence of discriminatory behavior. The other 16 would undergo investigation. 3 supervisors were fired on the spot. 2 tried to argue. I didn't listen. Captain Lawrence Brennan, who'd been on Flight 2847, was suspended for 2 weeks without pay for failing to intervene earlier. You saw what was happening and did nothing until it became your problem, I told him. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. Patricia Hoffman, the senior flight attendant who'd tried to de-escalate, was promoted to training director. You tried to do the right thing. Now I need you to teach others how to do the same. At 2 p.m., I stood in front of a room full of cameras and reporters. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Simone Hayes, CEO of Skybridge Airlines. I'm not going to pretend yesterday didn't happen. I'm not going to minimize it or make excuses. What happened on Flight 2847 was assault. It was discrimination, and it was the result of a culture that I, as CEO, allowed to exist. Reporters scribbled furiously. Today, I took the following actions. 43 employees have been suspended pending investigation into their participation in discriminatory behavior. 27 have been terminated. 3 supervisors have been fired. We have implemented mandatory bias training for all employees, body camera programs for flight attendants, an independent oversight committee for complaints, and a comprehensive passenger bill of rights. I paused, letting that sink in. These changes will cost approximately $12 million in the first year. They will impact our short-term profitability. Some investors will be angry. Some people will say I'm overreacting. But I would rather lose money than lose my integrity. I would rather take a stock price hit than continue running an airline where passengers can't trust they'll be treated with dignity. A reporter shouted, "What about Vanessa Chun? Will you be pressing charges?" Ms. Chun has been terminated and will face criminal charges for assault. She is cooperating with our investigation into the broader cultural issues that enabled her behavior. But make no mistake, her cooperation doesn't excuse what she did. She will be held accountable. Do you think this will hurt Skybridge's business? Short term? Probably. Long term? I think passengers will choose airlines that treat them like human beings. I think good employees will want to work for companies that value integrity. I think investors who care about sustainable growth will recognize that you can't build a successful business on a foundation of discrimination and fear. Some people are saying you're only doing this because you were personally affected. And they're right. I am doing this because I was personally affected. Because yesterday, I experienced what thousands of passengers have experienced. I felt what it's like to be judged, dismissed, and ultimately assaulted because someone in power decided I didn't matter. And yes, I had the privilege of being the CEO, of having the power to fight back. But what about all the passengers who don't have that power? Who file complaints that get ignored? Who switch airlines because they're tired of being treated like problems instead of people? I'm doing this for them too. The questions kept coming, but I'd said what I needed to say. I thanked the reporters and left. 6 months later, the data started telling a story. Customer satisfaction scores, up 34%. Best in the industry. Employee turnover, down to 18% from 34%. People wanted to work at Skybridge now. Discrimination complaints, down 89%. The few we received were investigated thoroughly and resolved quickly. And the stock? It had recovered fully and was now 6% higher than before the incident. Turns out investors like companies that have their act together. We'd terminated a total of 39 employees after full investigations. We'd promoted 8 people who'd been trying to do the right thing all along, but were being held back by toxic supervisors. We'd hired 73 new employees, and our training program was so good that other airlines were copying it. The body camera program was controversial at first, but after 3 months, even skeptical flight attendants admitted it made their jobs easier. False accusations dropped to almost zero. Bad behavior by crew members was caught and addressed immediately, and passengers felt safer knowing there was accountability. The Independent Oversight Committee had reviewed 147 complaints in 6 months. They'd found in favor of passengers in 91 cases, in favor of crew in 34 cases, and determined 22 were misunderstandings. Their mere existence had changed behavior. People knew they were being watched, and they acted accordingly. But the most surprising impact was cultural. Passengers started sharing stories on social media, but now they were positive. Just flew Skybridge, and the crew was amazing. Treated everyone with respect. This is what airlines should be like. The hashtag Skybridge standard became synonymous with excellent service. We won awards. The NAACP gave us their Corporate Responsibility Award. Travel industry publications named us Most Improved Airline. Harvard Business School wanted to do a case study on our transformation. And our competitors? They were scrambling to catch up. Within a year, major airlines had implemented similar reforms. The FAA was considering making some of our policies into federal regulations. One viral video had changed an entire industry. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Some former employees sued for wrongful termination. We won every case. Turns out when you have documented evidence of discriminatory behavior, it's pretty easy to justify firing someone. A few passengers complained that our crew was too nice now, which told me everything I needed to know about those passengers. And Jeffrey? He'd resigned from the board after 6 months, unable to accept that doing the right thing was actually good business. He'd sold his shares at what he thought was the peak, right before we announced record quarterly earnings. Last I heard, he was advising a different airline on efficiency measures. I wish them luck. 2 years after the incident, I visited Flight 2847's route, New York to Atlanta, one more time. In coach, in a hoodie, in seat 24B. The flight attendant who approached me was young, maybe mid-20s, with a bright smile. Good afternoon. Can I get you anything before we take off? I'm good, thanks. No problem. If you need anything at all during the flight, just let me know. We're here to make sure you have a great experience. She meant it. I could tell. There was no judgment in her eyes, no assessment of whether I belonged in her cabin. Just genuine warmth and professionalism. During the flight, I watched her interact with passengers. Every single person was treated with the same respect, whether they were in first class or the back row, whether they were in suits or sweatpants, whether they were white or black or Asian or Latino. This was what I'd been fighting for. This moment, multiplied across thousands of flights, millions of passengers, every single day. When we landed, I identified myself to the crew. The young flight attendant's eyes went wide. Oh my God, Dr. Hayes. I didn't realize. I wouldn't have treated you any differently if I'd known. But, I know, I said with a smile. That's exactly the point. Her name was Jessica Torres, and I promoted her to training specialist on the spot. You're doing exactly what we want every crew member to do. I want you to teach others. As I left the airport, I thought about Vanessa. She'd pleaded guilty to assault charges and received 6 months probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. She'd never work in aviation again. Her lawyer had reached out once to say she was working at a nonprofit now, doing diversity training for corporate clients. Using her experience as a cautionary tale, I'd chosen not to respond. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. But I hoped she'd found some measure of redemption in helping others avoid her mistakes. My phone buzzed. A notification from LinkedIn. Patricia Hoffman, now our Director of Training and Culture, had posted. 2 years ago, Skybridge Airlines had a reckoning. Today, we have a standard. Grateful to work for a company that chose accountability over convenience and people over profit. Hashtag Skybridge Standard. The post had 12,000 likes and counting. I headed to my car, where Sarah was waiting with my schedule. You have a meeting with the governor in an hour. She wants to discuss implementing similar oversight policies for state contractors. Tell her I'll be there in 30 minutes. Because the work wasn't done, one airline was fixed, but there were dozens more that still operated under the old model. Hundreds of companies across industries where discrimination was tolerated, where power went unchecked, where people were treated as disposable. The fight was bigger than Skybridge. It was always bigger than Skybridge. But it had to start somewhere. And it started with one CEO, on one flight, who decided that enough was enough. Here's what I want you to understand. Change doesn't happen because people in power suddenly wake up and decide to do better. Change happens because someone forces them to confront the cost of their inaction. For me, that cost was a slap across the face and 5 million people watching it happen. But for you, it might be different. Maybe you've experienced discrimination that wasn't caught on camera. Maybe you've seen injustice that nobody else witnessed. Maybe you've stayed silent because you didn't think your voice mattered. Your voice matters. Every complaint you file, every review you write, every time you speak up when something isn't right, that's documentation. That's evidence. That's the foundation for change. You want to know the real reason Skybridge transformed so quickly? It wasn't just my decision. It was the passengers who recorded video, the live streamers who shared it, the people on social media who refused to let it be swept under the rug, the former employees who came forward with their stories, the current employees who said, yes, this needs to change. Change is collective. It requires all of us. So here's what I'm asking you to do. First, if you see discrimination happening, anywhere, not just on airlines, document it. Record it if you can safely do so. Take notes. Get witness information. Because the most powerful weapon against injustice is evidence that can't be denied. Second, speak up. File the complaint. Write the review. Make the phone call. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it might not seem like it matters. But every single data point adds up. Every complaint forces companies to acknowledge there's a problem. Third, support companies that do the right thing. Vote with your dollars. When a business makes real changes, reward them with your loyalty. When they don't, take your business elsewhere. Capitalism only works as a force for good if consumers demand better. Fourth, if you're in a position of power, any power, even small power, use it to protect people who have less. You don't have to be a CEO to make a difference. Managers can protect their teams. Supervisors can stand up to toxic bosses. Coworkers can support each other. We all have spheres of influence. Use yours. And finally, understand that accountability isn't about destroying people. It's about creating systems where bad behavior has consequences and good behavior is rewarded. Vanessa Chen lost her job, and she should have. But the system that created her, that enabled her, that told her it was okay to treat certain passengers as less than human, that system was the real problem. When we only focus on punishing individuals without fixing systems, we just create new individuals who make the same mistakes. Real change is structural. It's about policies and oversight and training and culture. It's about building organizations where doing the right thing is the easy thing, where discrimination is harder than inclusion, where treating people with dignity is just standard operating procedure. That's the Skybridge standard. And it can be your company's standard too, whatever industry you're in, whatever role you play. If this story resonated with you, if you believe businesses should be held accountable, if you think people deserve dignity regardless of what they look like or where they sit or how much money they have, then I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel. Share this story. Leave a comment telling me about times you've witnessed injustice and what you did about it, or what you wish you'd done, or what you're going to do differently going forward. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. And the more we talk about these issues, the more we document them, the more we refuse to accept that's just how it is, the more we create pressure for actual change. I started this story by saying I'd remember what Vanessa said to me. And I do. I remember every word. But what I remember more is what happened after. The 43 employees who were held accountable, the thousands of passengers who now fly with confidence, the industry-wide transformation that started with one moment of violence. That's the power of refusing to stay silent. That's what happens when someone with power chooses to use it for more than just profit. So don't wait for your CEO to get slapped on camera. Don't wait for a viral video. Don't wait until the problem becomes so big it can't be ignored. Start now. Speak up now. Demand better now. Because the cost of silence is always higher than the cost of accountability. And if there's one lesson from Skybridge Airlines, it's this. The people who underestimate you, who judge you by your appearance, who think they can treat you however they want because you don't matter, those people are wrong. You do matter. Your dignity matters. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. Use it. This is Dr. Simone Hayes, reminding you that real power isn't about putting people in their place. It's about making sure everyone knows their place is at the table, treated with respect, valued for their humanity. Subscribe for more real-life stories of accountability, transformation, and people who refuse to accept that things couldn't change. Because they can change. They just need us to demand it. Drop a comment below and tell me. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in the service industry? What happened? What would you do differently now? And remember, the next time someone tries to put you in your place, make sure they understand exactly where that place is, and that it's probably higher than they ever imagined. The slap lasted 1 second. The transformation lasted forever. This has been the true story of how one moment of injustice became a movement for change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of the solution.